Today I'll talk about communication. Communication is very important part of human being. Without proper communication, a person cannot survive in the world properly. So, to live in the world properly, we have to communicate properly in this world. They have several types of communication. First, family communication. We have to communicate with family members. These communications especially based on affection, based on emotion, based on reality, based on natural behavior. We used to behave with family members naturally. We used to use emotion with family members and family relatives. On the other hand, they have another type of communication, that is social communication. Social communication is mostly depends on mutual understanding, mutual benefit, mutual respect. Mutual respects are pivoting within social communication. So, social communication is very much important in our life. They have another type of communication, that is business communication or professional communication. Business communication is mostly depend on pragmatic, concrete, correct, and based on reality. It is also important to maintain courtesy, and it is also important to maintain ground activities on the basis of ground reality. Business communication is on type of activities like computer, as computer is driving or running by set of programs, set of instructions, or set up different workings. In the same way, business communications are driving or running on the basis of several types of activities or several types of instructions or several types of other activities. So, from that perspective, business communication is also important to live in the world for human being. Now, we'll think that the business communication cannot be related with social communication. On the other hand, social communication cannot be related with family communication. Each and every type of communication must be separated from other part. Otherwise, this will be communication barrier. To avoid the communication barrier, we must segregate, we must be separated from each type of communication from other parts. Now talk about the process of communication. There have different types of process of communication, like face-to-face communication, like physical communication, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, like technology enabled communication. All sorts of communication are appropriate in appropriate place. Think a person staying a definite place and another person in staying another country, the what sorts of communication will be appropriate? Of course, technology enabled communication like telephone, like virtual communication, like other technology enabled communication is most appropriate. On the other hand, a person is staying beside a person must need to maintain a communication, that is face-to-face communication. A person is blind. Maintaining communication with blind person must be the verbal communication. So appropriate communication for appropriate person is very much important. Inappropriate communication with inappropriate people is of course and absolutely communication barrier. So we must consider the processes of communication or process of communication for appropriate place for appropriate people. Now we'll talk about how to communicate with other people. They have several ways to communicate with other people, but it depends on the status of specific people or educational qualification of specific people or the situation of a specific people. That means the communication with senior will not be the same as communication with junior. On the other hand, communication with educated people will not be same as uneducated people. On the other hand, communication with higher authority will not be the lower authority. So from that perspective, how to communicate with other people, that will depend on the reality of a specific person. A person who is in aggressive mode, you need not to maintain aggressive mode with a specific person. That will be counterproductive and that will destroy the environment. Communication with aggressive moded people or communication with gentlemen will not be the same. So how to communicate with other people, that will depend on ground reality and on the basis of a specific person. Now we'll talk about communication in international level. We have to consider to communicate at international level, that is cultural diversity, language and location of geographical location of a specific country. So communicating internationally, first consider the language. Language is predetermined and very dominant factor in international communication. Finally, we have to consider the process of communication. We have to consider the kinds of communication. We have to consider how to communicate with other people. We have to consider in international communication in several factors. Those things must be considered for effective communication. Otherwise, our communication will not be effective rather than defective, and we will not able to go forward. So to be a successful man, you must consider the most appropriate communication for appropriate place for appropriate person. That is our main pillar of success.